Sweet. Feel free to chime in at any time. I'm going to kind of go through it little by little. Give it a couple minutes because I know a couple people were going to be running a little behind. I'll give it like 2 more minutes to 6:05 or 7:05 Eastern, just in case. Got 13 in here, 10 on the slideshow. It's 15 slides, so it shouldn't be too long. I'll try not to make it too long and chop it up into a million different things. Stops. Nice to have you in here, man.
Yo, don't leak.
Give it another minute or two. Let's get some other folks kind of hopping in. I think Marauder was going to be hopping in here too. I think for the most part, everybody in here plays Disruptor, at least on Lilith or West, or is a part of the kill squad. I'm imagining, right? I don't see anybody who I would see like a melee in here or anything like that.
Yeah, but that's the only server I play Disruptor on. I'm a VG flail most of the time.
Hey, it's all right. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you putting it together.
Yeah, no worries. All right, I think we'll get it started. I'll just start off. I'm Hunch. It says in Discord. Some people know me, some people do not. Pretty open to any help. If you guys need help in your ticket, you can just tag me. I can see tickets. So if you need help, shoot me a tag in there or DM, and I'll try to respond as fast as possible. I want to start off by saying I'm no means the best disruptor in this game. I still learn every single war and improve myself and reach out to others who I feel comfortable and confident in getting answers to. And I think that's important, is finding those individuals who you feel comfortable and confident reaching out to. And then just try to stay consistent with them. Even if you have two, I have two of them, and I ask the same question to both of them. And most of the time, they have the foundation of the response is the same. And then they might say, well, this or this. And then you kind of have to look at it and see what actually works best for you in your situation, or if there's a way you can bridge the two different things that they're talking about. So it's always good to get a second opinion, and it's by no means insult getting a second opinion. I think it's free information that you should be able to take and use at any given point. So with that said, we give you the Home Depot Disruptor Macro Micro overview. This is basically for a lot of the Lilith players. I'd be more than happy to share it anywhere else and just change the old Home Depot side of it. So we'll start with that. And can you guys still see my screen okay? Because I'm not going to be able to see on Discord because the slideshow pulls on both my monitors. So you guys still able to see it?
Yeah, it's
All right. Okay. So this is kind of the agenda of what we're going to go through, all right? We're going to go through the objective of the kill squad, what is the importance of the kill squad, target priorities, and then group 7, 8, 9, 10, some things to keep in mind, loadouts, And these loadouts are mostly geared towards the disruptors, not the bows or the fire staffs or the VGs that might be in these groups as well. So that's not you won't see that. It'll be more so disruptor based. And then obviously just some questions at the end. Why is Kill Squad important? So the first thing I want to start off with is desync kill squads directly impact the quad groups. Kill squads are a support function to the war. So we have to think that we support the main ball as the main ball also supports us in a way. So we have to be supporting each other. You can't carry wars by main ball just hard diffing or kill squad hard diffing. They got to work in tangent with each other. So a good example of this is quads are not able to properly set up and a higher probability to stagger the army. If you have a desync kill squad that is just hard losing or not winning, your quads are not going to be able to play in position and they're going to get staggered, effective by group 8 getting some picks on some melees. That's going to stagger the top left or bot left on attack on C or even on B. And you're going to start getting staggers in the army. And then that trickles down to, well, we get staggered. Now quads will not be able to have effective crashes because their groups are staggered, because they got a VG down or a melee down, right? So now our crashes are not effective. And that's going to result in losing crashes, and enemy having better player to player ratio. They might outnumber us 2-1 on point. Losing those crashes correlates into no point spin, no win. And then the caller identifies this and has to reset. Resets waste time, which ultimately loses you the war, right? So Kill Squad is a massive support group. And for those who've ever played Melee or seen Melee VODs, it's almost like taking the IGVG and just take that out of the group from your quads and watch how much worse that quad will perform, right? So think of it as that type of support role. We support the main ball to be able to play their role and to play it well. Just like the main ball needs to play their role, so we can also play ours in that respective manner. Top right and bot right on B plays well, so they can also push off into support weak side. Top left and bot left pushes off to support group 8 on inner lane when they are winning those fights. So we help each other. The overall objective on Kill Squad: we have fight specific lanes outside of the designated quads, the 4 quads on point. And those lanes are inner, mid, wide fight, and weak squad. You have 4 groups. Effectively apply and prevent healer pressure in tangent with quad pressure, which converts to main ball value. And those 2 groups are going to be mostly group 7 and group 8 are going to have the most main ball value on those groups and Kill Squad. They can generate a lot of main ball pressure. How do we do that? So group 8, inner lane, taking and holding space, preventing escape routes for quad melee after crashes. For those group 8 players, when they crash, they are trying to get out of point. And by you poking them with a spear, because they do not run a lot of thrust protection, it's a lot of strike and slash, it really eats them up. And if you try to perforate those melees going back in, that's already burned a cleanse pot, now they're going back into the quad, 3 stacks of rend or a bleed. If you run Keen Jag, they got a debuff on them. Or if you're running Skewer, you can get a bleed off of them as well, or a slow with the second hit of a light attack chain. There's many things that really can make the life kind of tough on a melee on that, playing group 8. Also, group 8, this is another micro thing. That was another micro play, is the taking space and preventing escape routes. It's kind of micro play. Right clicking on the crashes to help damage reduction if a crash is called towards their lane. Apple's calls crash mid left crash, and you see it coming and you know it's coming. And if you have the space, even if you don't fully have control of the space, you're going to get more value and holding. You should all be running defender stance, so you get that 20% damage reduction on that crash. That could actually win you the point, or it could lose you the point. It's huge. It's absolutely huge in some of the top tier wars and even the bottom tier wars. It doesn't matter what the tier war is. That's such a big boost to the quad groups in that crash, because not only do you have the point tank there, you got your both inner lane disruptors right clicking on those crashes. They have a huge damage reduction radius, which could literally win you the point and save a couple melee. And then those melee can then push into inner lane and help you take space and hold space. And now we can get massive pressure and point spin. So that's one thing to think about in that group 8. Healer kills, and then melee or VG-IG picks on crashes. We kind of touched on that a little bit, right? So that's kind of overall objective, vaguely speaking. I gave a couple group 8 instances there. We'll go to target prio. Actually, I'll start off. Does anybody have any questions so far? Comments, concerns, anything? I don't think there's any like complete cookie cutter way that's like this is the absolute right way. I think each company does things a touch differently, and that's what makes them competitive, right? Because if everybody did the same exact thing, then we would all know what everybody's doing. So there's a foundation, and then there's certain tweaks. So I would think most people have heard sender, target caller, light DPS, healer, etc., right? So anybody not familiar with this that plays Kill Squad? It's all right. Speak up.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar.
Okay. Sender. I don't want to have to read this like kindergarten over and over, so I'll kind of speed read through it a little bit. Sender's consistent enemy healer pressure. Ideally, Sender should be running stopwatch. I'm a big believer in that. Some people will say run Ankh. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer there. I think both of those amulets will get the job done. I don't want to say this is the only way and the right way. Stopwatch damage as of now. That's what I would recommend with Scorpion. And then you're running Shield Bash, Shield Rush, Leaping Strike. And obviously your jab with Scorpion, Sweep, and Vault Kick. You're there to stun. You're not going to be a high kill role. You need to be disciplined in this role, and you need to communicate with your light DPS constantly. One thing that I've done playing in some groups is the sender that just doesn't talk, right? They're sitting there, they're blowing everything. They'll just be like, yeah, I'm on the healer. Like, all right, well, what is he? Even though I'm the melee, I'm still listening, like, what's going on in the group. And the light DPS need to know, like, no riposte, no flesh, right? What does he have left? He has no defense left now. So now the light DPS can literally turn on him and start dogging him down. So those comms are really important as a sender, letting your group know that, hey, this healer literally has nothing. He has nothing left. He has no repose. Use stone form. Those things need to become communicated as the sender. Target caller. I play a lot of this myself. Light DPS pressure. Continuous pressure, the light DPS and communication to your light DPS when they can be burst down. Need to apply pressure 30 minutes straight. No ADHD. You can run a few different setups here depending on your group. You need to be able to talk and perform in this role, or you fail your group. You can't be a person that's quiet. No Kill Squad person should really be quiet. You're always feeding information. Your lights are probably your light DPS are probably going to be a little bit less quiet. Your melees are going to be pretty talkative, and then I'd say your healer next, but your light DPS, they're really just kind of like listening. They should be familiar with your voice, looking for pings, looking for like on palm tree, on ping, no riposte. He's one. And things like that. They're looking to turn on that, and that's what they're doing. And then they're usually following up with like done or dead or picked or something along those lines, right? So that's kind of the information they're saying. I don't usually hear, sometimes they'll call out like, hey, take a look to your right, fire staff low or whatever, John Smith low. You can turn on them real quick if they're right next to a melee. But most of the time, good light DPS, they're not going to be close to the melee. light DPS. So, in my opinion, light DPS need to have some of the best hands in the game right now in this meta. They're playing low con. They need to know how to take space and deal damage and generate pressure with less survivability than those playing disruptor, right? So, and I kind of touched on this already. When they hear the no riposte, no burnout, they have no defense abilities left. Example, save your burst abilities if you're playing light DPS, like rapid shot or X-blow arrow or fireball or pillar for your fire staffs to secure the kills rather than pad damage that just does not equal any value. The most value you can have is securing kills in kill squad, so that way you can plus. If you're group 7, you can take and you're running 2 bows or you're running a fire staff. You're usually running just one light DPS in 7. So if you do that, light DPS can then turn to main ball value and start pumping the light DPS at their quad DPS. Or group 9 runs 2 bows, and if you get a pick and now you're +1, that other bow can turn into group 8 and free cast. Some of that stuff is so detrimental when you're playing. If you ever been, you're like, I'm getting free casted by a fucking bolt caster from group 9, and this is dog shit right now. It's because they've won that fight, they've taken that +1, and now they're applying pressure into inner lane, so inner lane can now get pressure, the snowball effect. So another very important one here, taking space while dealing damage. I kind of touched based on that. Playing too far behind as light DPS, you're just giving up the space, right? You're leaving your disruptors. Your healer is usually going to be playing behind the lights, like in group 9, right? Or group 10. If your healer is playing in front, you're just going to get dogged down. You're making yourself susceptible to just getting dogged down, and that's not where you want to be. That light DPS, they need to be up. They need to be linear to the side, however you want to word it. They need to be playing up, playing aggressive, taking space while dealing damage, and they need to be bursting the same target. I've seen VODs where I see light DPS shooting at melee disruptors when other light DPS are still alive in their vicinity. Like even if your melee isn't on that and they're not playing it right, correct it. Like, hey, this is our matchup. This is our 5v5. Get on this guy. Who's the target caller, right? Get on this guy. He's right here. Hey, Hunch, he's right here. You're on the wrong guy. He's right here. Most of the time, they'll acknowledge that. If not, then it's something to look after the war, after the fact. Healer, keep your group together. I like to think of the healer as like the quarterback of the group, right? They can see the field. They have the best view in the group. They can see what's going on in front of them. They can see what's going on point most of the time. They can see what's going left. They can usually kind of feel the pressure that's happening or could be happening to form behind them. So be a voice. Don't make calls to try to lead your group, but reinforce your group play. Stay tight. Dog targets together. Communicate your heals and ZDs. It's super important, especially for those group 8 healers. The lead, the holder there in group 8 is usually demanding sacred, so he can hold space, and it's super important to communicate, hey, I got sacred in 5. All right, I'm going to start getting aggressive here. I'm going to play up to where I want to take the fight, and I'm talking on attack side here, where I want to take the fight. All right, drop sacred on Hunch. I'm going to hold this, drop sacred on Hunch, sacred on Hunch, 10-second CD, whatever, right? Just initiate that conversation of, hey, I got sacred in 10. That allows the disruptor to then process what he needs to do. Does he need to live a little bit? Does he need to give space? Can he get aggressive? Those are really big things. Any question on target prios? All right, I'll kind of go here. Don't mind my shitty paint. So group 7, aka weak side. So comps usually, ideally, you see 3 melee, 1 light DPS, and a healer, right? And on attack, this is all attack POV. I think attack POV is probably a good one to start. Defenses are usually a little bit easier than attacks. You can tell a strength of company by winning on attack, right? So looking to play up, 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 right? We want to take that space up here. I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but ideally you want to be up here. All right. This is kind of like a vague range, but ideally weak side, you're going to want to be up here, right about top right. As soon as you get your pick in your group, the light DPS should be looking to apply pressure to main ball enemy road, right? So light DPS should be applying pressure here, or if you can be starting to apply pressure here, top right, bot right, ideally probably more top right. Use your respawns from A to apply quick pressure into their road. Use your respawns, kind of follow your blues to start applying pressure. If they're a top right quad, they're probably going to be coming in through here, right? If they're a bot right, they're probably going to be coming in from behind. I probably wouldn't give that space. Think about the space that you earned and how am I going to hold it? All right, respawns in 10, right? I'm sitting here, I'm holding space. I'm trying to apply pressure to B when we get a pick. I see 3 melee coming up, or 2 melee coming up, or 1 melee, whatever that might be, melee and a VG. They're probably going to come into here. Use that to get aggressive and take some more space. And now we can look at C point here a little bit. Rotating through ramparts when we take B. Very common for weak side, rotating through ramparts, excuse me, when we take B. So usually they bring the fight right up here. And I kind of just made like a little U shape because a lot of this fighting will come to here. You can drag quad DPS out towards bonfire. You can drag that weak side group out here to get value and pull them away from point. That's pretty troll. If you can pull 5, you can pull their quad DPS out here away from point, you're just doing nothing but adding value. Yeah, it might suck and you might get piss farmed a little bit, but I know Botched and I experienced that on C Marama. We were getting huge value by pulling +3 on DPS, and we were to spin C point. So we want to own the space that's highlighted, applying pressure top right when you secure a pick, right? We're looking in high point tick. So we gotta be careful for fake tick, but 50, 60, 70%, we're looking to bring the fight in a little bit because ideally and surely there will be a crash and they're gonna breathe and we want to punish, right? We want to punish what's given, but don't get greedy. That's kind of a big thing that I like to stand by is punish what's given, but don't get greedy. Any questions or anything to add on Group 7? I know there's some seasoned Group 7 players in here, I see. So if you have anything to add, feel free to add it. All right. Group 8. Inner lane. A comp that you'll ideally see in inner lane, 2 melee, one VGIG and a DPS, usually fire staff, and your healer. Big thing on inner lane. I think it's one of the most important lanes. I could be a little biased, but I think it's one of the more important lanes. You need to earn your space here. This is always going to be a tough fight. Not only, I think inner lane personally is one of the harder lanes to play. It's not like the worthless fight of Group 10. Sorry for anybody that plays Group 10. I think it's just a weird 5v5 TDM match, but you're dealing with a lot here. You're dealing with quads more, you're dealing with crashes, you're dealing with melees breathing off. There's just a lot going on, and you're kind of the initiation to point spin because we need to control Appa or Bon on B or Appa Bon on C, right? And that starts with controlling inner lane. Because if you don't control it, they're just going to punish point. They're going to add value by putting pressure to bruisers, VGs, etc. Right? So we got to earn the space. Once the space is earned, don't give it up for free. Hold it. And that's where I was kind of calming before, like placing sacred here, right? I need sacred here so I can hold this space. We need to hold this space. Fight in sacreds. That's one of the things I see like disruptors not doing as much in inner lane as they'll like ask for a sacred, but then they'll play more towards bond. Like play in it. Play in that 1400 tick or 1500 tick sacred with Ankh, right? When you +1, look to punish point melee. That's huge. And it's really annoying for those playing on point. You can hear it in melee VOD. They got fucking spears on me, poking me in the ass. Like it's annoying to deal with, and it does add value. DR, right clicking on crash calls towards your lane. If there's a top left crash and you have the space, DR that, damage reduction that, help your melees out survive. You're holding space. Call for a sacred. You know, if I hear of like we're crashing top left me in 5, I'll say drop sacred on Hunch here. I'm playing up top left, drop sacred on me, drop sacred on me. What I'll do is I'll get a little bit closer to point right here. Drop sacred on me. I'll DR. So that way it gives a little bit more overlap on point, right? Yeah, it's not going to be the highest ticking sacred because the quad healers are going to have more focus. But if our melee happen to push off a little bit, they got something to fight in. And not only that, I'm damage reduction that for them as well too. Think about how you can impact and what is the value of your impact. So don't be scared. You can't be scared playing inner lane. Primary space takers, G8 loses, Oppo loses. If you lose and you're fighting back here, it's going to be a fucking bad day for point, for just the war in general, if you're hard losing inner. All right, we'll go over to C point here. So the big one here too is moving into inner lane when we're all transitioning over and you got your 4 and 6, which is like a group here, right? Or however you want to do it. We'll just go 1 and 2, your top left, bot left. Move into that with your melee. And melee's, you know, I'm not a bruiser or a bruiser reviewer, but moving that into that together, moving them into inner lane, and then your disruptors and your G8 kind of moves in behind, or maybe just a little bit wider, right? With 9, they kind of move in through here and then kind of cut through. That will help you get that space and be able to hold that space a lot easier, right? So I kind of copy pasted the same thing over on B because it also translates over to here. So it's pretty much the same concept. Couple thing changes are how you move into your lane on the rotate over is really important. And I think it could definitely impact how C point starts or how C point's going to go. And moving in with your quad groups is really important. Any questions on group 8 or how that should be played or what you experienced or anything of that sort? If not, I'll go to the next one. Group 9, mid lane, right? Ideally, again, 2 melee, 2 bows. I've seen 2 melee, a bow, and a fire staff. I've seen 2 melee, 2 fire staffs. So I mean, there's each company runs things a little differently. Obviously, signups kind of affect that, availability affect that, etc. So most of the time, 2 melee, 2 bows, and then you healer, right? We're fighting just outside inner lane. So at group 9, when the +1 should look to +1 inner lane or wide to create the snowball effect. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of the snowball effect, but basically it kind of starts outside in for the most part, not necessarily inside out. So outside in, you'd be like group 10, they win their fight, their +1 helps group 9. Now they win the fight, now they got a +2, and they can +2 inner quick, and then they kind of go back out. But most of the time, you'll see like group 9 with their +1, and if they're hard winning or farming, they might +2 inner, and that's when things are going smooth. Over on C side, we're looking to win fight middle lane and support inner lane when possible. So the big one here is I'll see like group 9, if they're winning, they'll be like, oh, let's go help wide. I don't agree with that, and the reason being I do not agree with that is because we've won this space and now we're giving up a large amount of space by going to help wide. So that way their enemy G9 when they come back, or even G8 when they come back, they can kind of take this mid lane over again. So if anything, punish inside because that's closer to point and directly affects point quicker as well. So don't give up the space by pushing all the way out wide. Look to punish inside if you're winning, or push up and punish a little bit over here if you're winning. Kind of like I said here, if you support wide, you're giving up too much space for their quad DPS or other kill squad players to wrap behind, and we do not want that, right? We kind of want to create the wall effect. Now, you can have a front to back mindset with group 9. So for those that have that, you can kind of get that front to back mindset when you reset. Anybody have any questions for the group 9? No? All right. Group 10, aka wide fight. I'm not super experienced here. I played some wide bow, so I can have that. I played a little bit of wide disruptor, but I comp ideally 2 melee, 2 bows. The bows you can get to 2 bolt casters, or you can run a bolt caster and 1 nature syncretic, and 1 healer. Priority number 1 here: healer pressure kill. When you get that healer pressure kill, you look to kill light DPS afterwards. And you do that, and now as soon as you kill healer, you'll notice that most of the time, those melee, those disruptors, they'll kind of fall back. They'll kind of retreat a little bit because they can't do anything. Because now you can put 2 disruptors to dog 1, and it will go downhill for them really fast. So normally, automatically, they'll kind of they'll give space, right? They'll start to give space, and you can hold, and that's when you can kind of push up a little bit and start to impact mid lane. So when you're +1, look to +1 mid lane to create that snowball effect that we talked, right? Like one of the bows, one of the bolt casters. The disruptors, they normally are not running any nature or any type of lightning protection, so that can actually it can shred us pretty hard, especially if you're hitting with like rapid shot or expo into rapid shot. Oh Jesus. All right, Bo's playing linear with group and not from behind. We kind of talked about that earlier, right? Like these bows here, if you're playing from behind, let's say like to the top of the M and the top of the W, and you're fighting up here, right, by D and D, how they're kind of linear here, get linear with them. Get up here and take that space so that way your healer can.
Hunch, your mic just disappeared.
There, my mic cut out.
There
Can you guys hear me?
Now you're good. You're good.
All right, my bad. Get up here as well with them, right? Because your melees are the ones that are engaging and causing the pressure. And if your bows are hanging back, your healer is going to be hanging back behind your bows ideally. You don't want your healer playing in front of your bows, right? So now they're going to become out of range for your healers to be dropping single targets potentially, and sacreds. So play up, play close. If you don't feel comfortable, run some fucking OPRs, get comfortable. That's how good wide fights and good mid lanes, that's how they're winning, is because they're aggressive, they're taking the fight where they want to take it, and they're going to take the space how they want to take it. They're more proactive rather than reactive. If you're on the reactive, and now you have to abide by their rules, kind of, right? So be proactive, take the fight where you want it to happen. Anything to add on wide fight, or any questions on wide fight? Again, I'm not well versed on wide fight, but I have a pretty decent understanding on what happens and how it should happen. Also, another one here I'll add: if we're attacking on C, we want to be playing close to point. All right, we want to be ticking. If we're defending, that's when we want to be pulling farther away from point, taking the fight farther away from point. We don't want to be fighting way the fuck down here when we're attacking, and we could be applying pressure to C, right? I know I shouldn't say I don't, I know how we're running it on Lilith. We're doing 9-10 on C, which is good. We can generate a lot of pressure very quickly. Take the fight to C and fight as close to C as possible so we can spin. They don't want to play there. Their goal is to pull you away. And the more you pull away, the more they're getting value. So keep that in mind. Kind of moving pretty quickly here. Remember this, right? Know when to apply pressure and when to hold space. All right. So if you're down 1 in group 8, you probably don't want to be super aggressive, right? If you're down 1 disruptor, if you're down one VG, the only VG you got, now you don't have a shower to go through, you don't have a scream, you don't have an oblivion. You kind of want to just hold space there and maybe slightly pull back, but you don't want to just give it up. Make them earn it. Maybe respawns are in 5. If respawns are in 20, it might be a little bit different story. So know when to apply the pressure, but also when to hold the space. All right. Target calling is very important. Group comms should be constant, but not a cluster of useless info. That kind of goes back to of the sender, the person on light, the healer, what is your job and what should you be calming to your group. All right. We don't want like, I know sometimes it can be fun, but like useless info of, oh man, they're just piss farming on point. Like I don't care about that right now. Like I that's not useful to me. Now if it's a piss farm, sure, like bullshit around, and if it's lax, but try to keep the comms consistent and have value. If healer has 2 people or more, help them. All right. One person is normal. Any healers, one person on you is completely normal right now. But if you get 2 or more, that's when you can call for like, hey, I need a peel. I got 2 on me, right? But 1 is normal. Healers, if under pressure, move towards the group. Isolation, moving away is pretty much a guaranteed death. Move towards us as your group and say, hey, I'm gonna flush A into you, and I'm coming. I'm like 5 meters away, 10 meters away. Help us bridge that gap for you, and the reaction time will be quicker, and it's easier for us to help you out if you move into us. Even if we're fighting somebody, it will be easier. You can drop sacred, you can DE, and if you're using the rebound passive, it will help us as well too. So it's more value being there going into us. It'll actually help you stay alive. Don't worry about the oh shit. Don't worry, I forgot to delete this. This was off of a work template. Here is my group 7 loadout. I just wanted to give some like ideal loadouts for group 7, 8, 9, 10, because I do get questions like, hey Hunch, what do you run for group 8? Like, do you run, how much flame conditioning do you run, or what's your resistances, or what do you run on your spear, or what do you run? So I thought this would be good just to kind of show that, hey, this is what I run and this is what I'm comfortable running. I'm not saying this is absolute BIS, but it does work extremely well, right? So the one thing I'm a big fan of is perforate on spear. I do know in the May update they might cut that down, but right now it is super strong, 75% fortify. And then I run 2 tricking fort because in group 7 you don't have to worry about an oblivion over there or something stripping that away. So I run thrust conditioning, 4 thrust conditioning, 3 flame conditioning. I run a flame shield because they have fire staffs over there, and sometimes their quad DPS will be over there on weak side as well too, which would be a fire staff. It could be a great sword. I don't run any slash. I just run the normal Onyx setup, so I have 10%. But this loadout here, I find success in it. If anyone wants to add what works very well for them, feel free to add it.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, I got you loud and clear.
I was gonna say just like a good point in general for heavy. Obviously, like this kind of loadout is very kind of gold intensive. Just general in terms of heavy disruptor builds. A lot of people, which find a lot of success for it, I think it's very strong compared to like medium disruptor that I know a lot of people like to play as well. But it's kind of very strong to play heavy because with like frigid pieces, for example, you pretty much have twice the amount of perks as any other kind of disruptor. Obviously you're sitting at like Ellie version, Enchanted Ward, and then X third perk, kind of whatever you feel is more comfortable. But a lot of like the cheap and go-to kind of path for gearing will typically rely on like that Glacial Tarn dungeon plus whatever artifact you like. I know some people like the what's it called, the dark plate. Some people like tumblers. I think it's very like preferential in terms of like what kind of role you're running, right? Like for example, if you're playing like a group 10 where you know you're that disruptor that's not really getting hit, the bow is just kiting at you all the time, you can probably get away and breed a little more with like a tumblers. Versus like if you're sitting in group 8, always getting mauled down, like a dark plate might be better because you're just more armor stacking, more armor scaling, and more clumps are kind of being created around you. But that's generally just like a very cheap gearing path that a lot of people like to take. And again, like it's just double the perks versus an average disruptor build.
Yeah, Glacial is good. It's easier to grab for sure because like when Tarn's up, you can just spam the shit out of it, right? The only thing is you have to kind of wait for the seals because I think you got to use what 3 seals for dungeon, so you kind of at the mercy of seals, but it can definitely help save gold. All right, I'll move over back to the group 8 here. All right, this is what I run in group 8. Running 3 health, a lot of Ellie, just because of the fire staffs, right? And VGs. Obviously, I run thrust and everything because of spears, and then flame conditioning shield. So this is pretty standard here. The uptime for perforate, you need to be on your spear a lot. You should be on your spear a lot no matter what, and you'll find a lot of value with the perforate. Should be rocking that. When you weapon swap, it goes away, but you should ideally be on your spear most of the time anyways. So not too much different other than I added 2 Ellie, right? And instead of the Shrieking Fort. Group 9, I run pretty much the same thing here. Nothing changed. I'm sure there's some different specs people run, but I don't really feel like dropping more gold in New World at this time, so I run the same thing for 8 and 9. And then group 10, I go back to the Shrieking Fort out there, the thrust. I just use this leg piece I use for all of them because, again, I'm just not really wanting to spend more gold into trying to find another piece there, and it works. So Ellie and thrust works well with boltcaster and spear. The flame is kind of dead out and wide because you don't really get much for flame. And then I run a lightning shield here. So that's kind of the changes there. Go back to the 2 Shrieking Fort, lightning shield. And then if you run Scorpion, you'd run Scorpion here. Kind of put it with questions here.
What are your thoughts on
And-
freedom?
What's that?
What are your thoughts on freedom?
Freedom.
Here's-
I don't know anybody personally running freedom. I see if you can get a piece really cheap, like if you get a conditioning and enchanted ward freedom piece, I mean that might be expensive, but or let's say you get like a Shrieking Fort thrust conditioning freedom piece, you could run that on weak side for sure. It might be cheaper than having one that would give you health. I don't think there's absolutely no place for it, but I mean, has there been times where I'm like, I wish I had a little bit of freedom here. Would have been nice. It could have saved my life, but the times that I probably could say that, most of the time it results from a mistake that I made, not necessarily the flow of the war, if that makes sense, like melee. It's not just the flow of the war, it's mostly due to a mistake I made where freedom would have saved me, potentially. I don't know if that answers your question as much, but it's kind of like a cope, I guess, for me. If I was like, oh, if I just had freedom, I wouldn't have died there. Well, why did I get into that situation in the first place? Did I overcommit? Did I apply pressure when I shouldn't have? Did I, stand myself out? So I don't think it's completely dead, but I would consider it like a 2.5 perker, depending on what group you play in.
What are your thoughts on Venom?
I personally have not played with Venom. So I don't have like info on that. I know some people have, but I have not played with Venom. But I can definitely ask and get it answered for you.
Think it's Venom, Nature's Wrath plus Hatchet.
Yeah, I think if that's a play, you're gonna be playing a medium, and I think Venom would
Yeah.
be a medium quad DPS, and a lot of quad DPS right now. I think they're still on fire staffs. There might be some armies that run mediums. Maybe they run like 2 mediums and 2 fire staffs. So I think it's a pretty niche thing. But I have not personally been in a war with Venom or can give you any type of feedback on it. I do see how it can be very good. I don't think it's a dead artifact. I can say that. I do think it is useful. Anybody else have anything?
I did have one question. One of the areas where I was struggling last time around was I felt like the caller was swapping targets of priority like pretty quickly, and not because targets were dying, but simply because for them it was a more convenient attack to tackle somebody else. And so a lot of times I would like leap in on their target and then they'd target swap and I'd be left fighting somebody by myself and the whole group was off chasing somebody else. Any suggestions on how to avoid that?
I'd say a good thing to do is in your group before war starts, identifying if it's not identified for you on your roster, identifying whose job is what and whose responsibility is what, and then stay with it. Like remind, like, hey, because it translates into even playing quads. Like if you're not playing as a 5-man or a 4-man ideally, right? The healer does their thing. You're
Right.
just not going to be doing anything. You're not. To make good kill squads play together, right? There's kill squads out
Totally.
there like Group 10. One of the most well-known Group 10s would be like Chakin and Karif and Arctics. Like there's a reason why these people excel so well is because 1, they know target priorities. 2, they know how to play the game, and 3, they play as a group and they punish.
Yeah.
And if
Totally.
you don't do that, then your group is almost just like no value at all. You're just kind of hitting shit. Your assists are low. Tells me you're not working as a group. Your assists should be important as a disruptor. It's not so much your kills. Your kills are for your light DPS. Group 9 disruptors are going to have more kills than the rest. Ideally, they should because they're able to flex to 10 or 8, where 8 is kind of stuck in inner and 10 is kind of stuck in wide, and maybe the light will push into group 9, but not the disruptor, right? The disruptor is not going to really be pushing into group 9. So if that's the case, the big one I'd say is start with setting the expectation. And then that way when the VOD review happens, it's said right there in the VOD review of, well, what was the expectation of what player who was supposed to be playing what? And then you can kind of go from there. So that way you set the group up for success on a review. Otherwise, if everybody's just kind of doing their own thing, then like what are we doing, right? We just OPRing or who's supposed to be doing what?
Yeah, totally. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody came out. Was not expecting this many people. Means a lot. Appreciate it. The one thing that I can say is I didn't have the opportunity to get the proper information to excel my gameplay, and there's individuals out there. There was one in this call that has personally helped me out to elevate me to the next level, and some people just don't get that opportunity and they don't have that person to reach out to. I just want to let you guys know that I'm always open to try to help and I'm willing to do more of this stuff. And as I learn more about how the meta changes, the best thing that we can do is just pass that down even to the tiers below. A lot of people are just like simply warlog mental right now. They don't give a fuck. But realistically, they do give a fuck because if the game dies, they're kind of like, well, shit, what now? Right? So I think there's a lot of good players that just haven't got the opportunity to learn or get that one-on-one review and see a T1 war and like what works and what doesn't work. because I can tell you what works at T1 will work in a T3, but what I can tell you is what works in a T3 will not work in a T1. It doesn't work like that. So what I can do in a T2, T3 war is fucking criminal. And what if I try to apply that to T1, I'll get absolutely smoked. So try to just don't be afraid to reach out. Most of the people that play at a high level, some of them are kind of checked out. You're going to run into them, but don't get discouraged because there are people who are very willing to help you out. All you have to do is just show the initiative that you want it. But if you don't, and if you're kind of in the mindset of like that's kind of what it is, game's dying, whatever, like then you won't get that. I don't want to call it a handout, but you won't get that information and you won't get that time. So how bad you want it. I've woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning for a VOD review with somebody just to get information. So try to keep that in mind. Shoot me a DM. You can @ me in your ticket. I'll always be honest with just experience and not just what I think. And if I don't know the answer, I will source it from individuals who I would trust, at least, who are probably better players than me.
Well,
But again,
I really appreciate it, man. Huge thank you, because you know, I do want to be stepping things up, and I didn't even know where to turn, but it's huge of you to say that. I really appreciate it, and I wanted to honor that, man. Thank you.
yeah, no worries. Not a problem.
Quick question. What stat splits do you usually run?
I've kind of messed around with a few different 300, 100, 300, 200. 200, 200, 200 are really the only two that I use. I'd say if you're not good at weapon swapping to cleanse your debuffs, like if that's something that you wouldn't remember, go 200, 200, 200. And just don't worry about it. I run the cleanse in inner lane. I run the 100, 300 in inner. 200 just because that 300 dex perk, right? I can weapon swap and cleanse. But if you're not thinking about that subconsciously, if it's not built into your memory, just run 200, 200, 200. Or 200, 200, 210. Always put more of your points into your con with your leftovers. Survivability is number one for Disruptor. If you're not alive, you can't apply pressure. If you can't apply pressure, you don't win. Resistances, I'd say anything in Group 8, I run 35 Flame and 30 Thrust. Group 9, I drop the Flame a little bit and up the Thrust. And then Group 10, I am 30 Lightning and I think it's 25 or 30 Thrust. And Group 7, I run 30-30. So they change just ever so slightly. And that can be done with gems, right?
I gotta go do dinner. Have a good one. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate it, Diana. Alrighty, guys. I think we have some Valhalla pushing and stuff coming up, if I remember right. I haven't checked pings or anything, but feel free to reach out anytime. Shoot me a friend request, @ me in your ticket, or a DM, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, gamer.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate you guys.